The City of Asylum program at UNLV is providing hope to writers persecuted in their home countries. And one of them, Egyptian author Ahmed Najee, is now a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award. Nevada Week spoke with him about the memoir that earned him that recognition, Rotten Evidence, Reading and Writing in an Egyptian Prison. All right, so February of 2016, the Egyptian government sentences you to 2 years in prison for violating public morality. What was it that you did that the government thought violated public morality?
Well, until now, I don't know really, to be honest with you. What happened, the story is what happened that in 2014, I published a novel called Using Life. And a chapter of this novel was published in a magazine. The official story is that someone reads this chapter, and after he read it, he had his blood pressure raised, and he kind of had a heart attack. So he went to the police station and accusing me of harming him. Now, what happened in Egypt legal system that anyone has the right to accuse anyone of anything, but it came to the Attorney General, the prosecutor, to decide is it legit or not. So in my case, they accused me of disturbing public morality and obscenity.
Because someone read a passage from your book and it gave him heart palpitations.
Yeah, because the prosecutor also reads the chapter and thought, oh, this is obscenity.
When you wrote the novel, though, were you aware at that time this could send me to prison?
No, not really. This never came to my mind. And all over like Egypt, legal history, like we have cases when writers were sent to the prison, but mainly it will be for political reason, for blasphemy. So this was kind of new and surprise. And even my legal team and my lawyers, they didn't expect like it will reach this level. Like I remember, well, we went to the court and we thought the worst scenario that they will find me guilty and will fine me. And I went to the court with the money on my pocket in case, oh, they fine me, so I will pay the fine and go. But what happened that we were all surprised by the 2 years rules.
Why do you think you got that stiff of a sentence?
I think because this was in 2016 and Egypt was going into a very dramatic shift. In Egypt in 2011, we had a revolution that ended up by taking out Hosni Mubarak. We had kind of 2 years where we have like a kind of big space for freedom and political participation. And then we have a military coup in 2013. And when the general and the military came to regime, they started to set new rules. And part of it was attacking freedom of speech.
You had been a blogger that wrote against the government prior to this, but you wrote under a pseudonym. Do you think they even knew that you were that person?
This happened, like my blogger phase was like was 2006 and 2007. I was a journalist also, so I was publishing like weekly. I had a weekly political column and articles that published in Masr al-Yom. And yeah, I expected like one day I will face problem. I already like during my career as a journalist for 15 years, I faced several legal challenge, but I never expected the thing will come through like fiction and novels, especially because like what kind of literature I'm writing science fiction. My main themes is always about love and friendship. So I was like, this was like a far away way to they come from.
Do you remember exactly what was in that excerpt that this man said gave him?
But seriously, like, because it was a full chapter, but it was all hilarious. Like, I remember when the prosecutor was investigating the case, there was a session, like, my lawyer said, oh, don't go to the prosecutor, we will go.
To defend you instead of you in person.
And in one session, the prosecutor asked the lawyer told him, you know, I could also accuse Ahmed of selling drugs. And it was like, what are you talking about? Because in this chapter, the narrator is saying that this chapter was written in the first person narrator. So it was like, oh, I went to this, I did this. So in this chapter, like the narrator is saying, well, I rolled a joint or I did blah, blah, blah. So for him, for the prosecutor, it was like, oh, it's Ahmed Nagy who's like confirming that he did this.
Because you wrote in first
Yeah,
person.
and my lawyer was like, no, it's not like that. He was like, well, was published in newspaper under his name, so if he was lying, this is another charge.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So
my
the
gosh.
level, so the level of discussion in this issue sometimes when go into like a bizarre area that is like trying to follow like a logic. It's getting complicated and hard.
How scary was this when you learned of your sentence?
I start to laugh. Like I remember I had like a laughing hysteria for a couple of hours when they told me.
A laughing.
Yeah. But like, because it was shocking and it was weird. We weren't expecting it. But then you adapt, and you grow also in Egypt familiar with the story of prison and people being sent to the prison because they express what they think or what they believe. So you are aware that there is a percentage that you will go to this path. But there was like shock in the beginning, and then you start to adapt.
The New York Times wrote an article about your sentence, and it spurred outrage among human rights advocates across the world. There were prominent artists and writers who signed a letter demanding your release, including Woody Allen. At what point did you learn about that letter, and what did you think?
So we were allowed to have a newspaper daily, okay, in our prison. And
in the prison?
Yeah.
Okay.
And suddenly one day, no one in the prison received their newspaper. So the news, we were cut on that day. And when we tried to ask the guard, where is the newspaper, they didn't answer. So it took me until the next week when my family visited me, and then they told me, oh, PEN America organized this campaign, and they have this letter that was signed by many people and many writers, and they give you this prize. And then I put the connection. So the prison banned the newspaper from all the prisoners in my prison because they didn't want the news to reach out to me. Because again, the aim of the prison, when a regime is banning a book or putting a writer in a prison, the aim of this is to isolate you from the society and to make you doubt what you are doing, doubt what you believe, to break you down, and to send a message to society that we have the upper hand, and we could, if you cross the line, you will send you to the prison and no one will remember you. But this kind of solidarity and the act is like breaking the prison. It's breaking the prison. You reach out to the prisoner. You send him a message that you are not alone, and there is other people who support you and believe you, and what you have done worth something.
Do you think that letter is why your sentence ended up being suspended? You ended up spending 10 months in prison, not 2 years.
I think it's playing a role, of course, but again, I received this letter and this campaign that was organized by PEN America, but at the same time, there was other campaigns from Egyptian writers and the Arabic writer. So it was a collective effort, including also my lawyer, my wife, who was also my lawyer, who like worked on the ground to reach this result.
And if the prison was in fact trying to intimidate you, they did not do a good job, because you get out and you write a book about your time in that prison. Part of the description of your book is, quote, through Naji's writing, the world of Egyptian prison comes into vivid focus with its cigarette-based economy, homemade chess sets, and well-groomed fixers. Well-groomed fixers, who are they? What do they do?
Well-groomed fixers. What is this part? We are talking about like grooming hair or what?
I don't know. And so you know what? This brings up an interesting point, because your book had to be translated to English from Arabic. And there's probably some lost in translation. I'm thinking of someone within the prison who is negotiating.
Yeah, well-groomed fixer, yeah, I know. So basically, because the system of prison in Egypt is different, than here. Now we are becoming American because Egypt is receiving a lot of money from the United States, and the government is using this to build new prisons. Following the American manual. So now they are changing the system of the prison.
That's interesting because when you read about American funding to Egypt, it's for the purpose of buying weapons.
Yeah, but again, they will. Yeah, but there is no really accountability or supervision of anything. But yeah, for this fixer, the system is like usually you will have other prisons who are working inside the prison. They are like a connection or a bridge between the prisoner and the administration. So, for example, it's like if you watched, what's the name of the movie? Shawshank Prison?
Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah. So you remember he was doing the taxes for the prison. Yeah, so you have the same system in Egypt, but it's bigger. So, for example, as an administrator in the prison, you have a lot of paperwork to do. So they will get just 2 prisoners and put them in his office, and they will work as an assistant to do the job for him. So actually, you have a very weird system where the prisoners themselves are the one who's running the prison under the administration.
There are other questions that are asked within this book. Some are funny, like how do you build a clothes hanger? But others are, how do you make sense of a senseless oppression? You're put in prison for writing fiction. Did you ever rationalize it? Did you ever make sense of it?
Yeah, of course, I start to question it. I start to question why I'm doing this and what is the aim and does it worth it? And you also start to question, well, after you get out of here, because at any prison, you are getting out in the end, what you are going to do. And I really had a doubt about everything. You have to understand also that I didn't see myself as a writer at that point. I already published several books, but I was mainly working as a journalist, working on the media industry, in documentaries, and making films. So I had another career. I was in my way to become an agent for belly dancers. So my life was going.
An agent for belly dancers?
Yeah. It's a long story, complicated. So my life was going into another path. But suddenly you are in prison for a year and you start to question everything. And I remember very well there is a night so we had this inmate in our cell who is, he was very violent person. And he was accused of stealing $400 million.
Vital person or violent person?
2, violent and violent. And he was accused of stealing $400 million, but he will say, oh, they are just 200 million, and now they send me in the prison, so I'm not going to give them any money back. And because he did all this scheme under his father's name, so they first arrested his father, and then they arrested him. So basically, he was in the prison, and his father, who was 81 years old, also was us in our cell.
They were together?
Yeah. And this guy was brutal. He doesn't care about anything, very selfish.
Not even his father?
Yeah. And then one day, I woke up at night, at 2 a.m. I go to the restroom, and I found him in the middle of the night crying hard. And I was surprised, are you okay? Why are you crying? What is the problem? And he was like, oh my God, have you read this book called In My Heart, a Hebrew Girl, which is a very romantic novel. It's romance and Sufi novel. Not kind of literature that I love, but it's mainly kind of literature also that's for teenagers mainly. And I was like, no, I didn't read it and I don't plan to read it. And I was like, man, you have to read it. I left the book on my bed because even when I look to the cover, I remember some sentence and I start to cry. And I was surprised, I was shocked. I was like, you have this guy that I once saw him smoking his cigarette while his father is having a heart attack and everyone is rushing to help his father, and he was just smoking a cigarette. And you have him crying at night in a prison cell because he was reading a book. So start to question, what is this power that is hidden in literature and writing in book? And how come, like a word or sentence written on a paper will reach the heart of such kind of person and squeeze it and push him to cry at night. And this was like a turning point, because you start to question, well, maybe that's why you are in the prison. Maybe because there is a secret, there is a power hidden inside written words that could reach people and flip them inside, upside, inside, outside.
Thank you so much for joining Nevada Week.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you for having me.